What's up guys, Justin from Fix My PEV here, and we have been talking about nRF Connect for more than a few weeks now, but here on this channel for a few weeks, and we've actually come across a couple of hiccups with the process. So when I showed you the process before, I was using a couple of boards that I personally had modified using Rewheel before that project was pulled from the internet, and that actually allowed me to make a connection via Bluetooth a lot easier. Unfortunately, not everybody has actually done that to their boards, so we were running into some hiccups with the functionality. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you guys how to calibrate your boards both on iOS and Android, and we're going to be specifically focusing on the GT for this one. We will have the other boards available on their own videos as well. Planning on doing one for the XR, planning on doing one for the Pint and Pint X. Same process for both of those, and that way you can follow along and see exactly what to expect. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into it, and as far as this goes, you will be able to connect to your GT, put it in factory mode, and then you will be able to run a calibration command that will serve as a digital tilt kit and also will allow you to repair your battery if you happen to disconnect it from your BMS and get that corrupted memory error that everybody loves. So, I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the process. If you have an iPhone or an iPad that you're able to use, I'm going to go ahead and go through that process first. If you have an Android phone, I will go through that process after the iOS, and you can actually look down below and you'll be able to find a timestamp to jump forward if you happen to have an Android device instead. Alright, thanks. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is make sure that you have your iOS device ready, and we are going to power on the Onewheel GT. We want to make sure that we get our light bar that tells us that it's on, and we also want to make sure that we have it set up in the level orientation that we want it to be in. I like to use this trim bin. You can use a number of different things. You could use chairs, you could use crates, you could use boxes, whatever you want. And ultimately, you could even potentially keep your tire on the ground and manually tilt the board with your hand, or put something under the tail to keep it exactly where you want it to be. Either way, make sure it's level the way that you want it before we start this process. The next thing you want to go ahead and do is you want to open up the Onewheel app. And you don't want to connect to the board, you just want to open up the app, and you want to go ahead and minimize it. You don't want to close it, you want to make sure that it's still available in the background. Next thing you want to do is go ahead and open up nRF Connect. And you're going to want to look for your board and go ahead and connect to it. And this is exactly what you should see. Once you're connected, things are going to populate here. You're not going to do anything here. Just go ahead and minimize that and return back to your Onewheel app and click on your Onewheel GT. It should still be highlighted. Once we're connected, we can see our battery percentage, all that good stuff. And you are going to navigate back to nRF Connect, making sure not to disconnect from the Onewheel or close the Onewheel app. We're going to stay connected in the background. So now you can actually see that it still says we're connected on nRF Connect, and we're also connected on the Onewheel app, which is actually something that I believe is only possible on iOS at this point. The Android processes a little bit differently. Obviously that's covered in the next segment of this video, but for now, what we're going to do is we're going to look for the unknown characteristic that has the UUID that starts with E659F302, and it's this one right here. We are going to hit the down arrow with the line under it. That's going to turn blue. This is actually going to put this in a process where we are listening for responses, Bluetooth responses from the device. The next thing we're going to do is hit the up arrow. This is going to allow us to send a command to the board. And we are going to type in CB. That's Charlie Boy, Charlie Boy. We're going to hit right, and the light bar should actually illuminate green for a moment, which it did, and that's actually got us in factory mode now. Now that we're in factory mode, we can go ahead and complete the level calibration of the Onewheel GT, the digital tilt kit, whatever people are calling it these days. That's what we're going to go ahead and do. And as a note, this is also the same command that will repair your battery and BMS if you happen to disconnect those and get the corrupted memory error. So we're going to hit the up arrow, and we're going to put in CA. We're going to write that. Board flashes, light turns green, turns off, turns back on, And we're actually done with the process. So we're going to disconnect from nRF Connect. I'm going to close it now just because. I'm also going to disconnect from the Onewheel app, again, just because I don't want any connections whatsoever. And I'm going to power cycle the GT. And as soon as we have power cycled, the board is good to go. So that's the entire process for iOS. Next, we're going to move into Android. Okay, so the process to calibrate your GT on an Android device is a little bit different than the iOS version, but there are some similarities. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is turn on the GT. And once the GT's on, obviously we're going to confirm that by the presence of the light bar being illuminated. We are going to open up nRF Connect on our Android device. And we want to make sure it's scanning. It says stop scanning in the upper right hand corner, so we know that it's actually looking for our board. And we're going to connect to the GT that we want to go ahead and calibrate. I'm going to click connect. And just while we're connecting here, I want to make sure that you have your board ready for the calibration. You want to have it level the exact way that you are hoping to calibrate when we go through this process today. So now that we're connected to our board on nRF Connect, you can see that it says disconnect in the upper right hand corner. We're actually going to want to hit that. And now that we've done that, we can see it change to connect. We don't actually want to close the nRF Connect app, so we're just going to go ahead and minimize it. And I just did that by dragging up a little bit and then clicking on an empty area of the screen. We are then going to open up the Onewheel app. And I'm going to drag down here. I'm going to go ahead and connect to the GT that we are attempting to calibrate. And I'm going to go ahead and stay connected here, but I'm also going to minimize the Onewheel app and go back to nRF Connect. You can see it now says we are connected. Even though we disconnected and went away from this screen, we are now connected with the Onewheel app in the background. So next we're going to click on Unknown Service. And it always likes to jump to the bottom. If you just put your finger on the screen while it starts to scroll, you can stop it. We're going to look for unknown characteristic with the UUID of E659F302. That's the start of it. Once you find that, you want to hit the three arrows, the three down arrows on the right with the line under them. You want to make sure that you see that X. This is actually going to enable notifications so that we can see what the board is actually receiving, and that will help us along the way knowing that the code has actually been sent. The next thing we want to do is hit the up arrow, all on the same characteristic here. We are going to put in a value of CBCB. And we're going to go ahead and click send. The light bar should illuminate green for a moment here, which it did, and that has now put us into what's known as factory mode. Factory mode is going to allow us to do what we need to do next here, which is to implement the digital tilt kit, re-level calibration, whatever you want to call it these days. We're going to be able to set that level orientation of our board based on where we want it while we're riding. And this is very helpful with aftermarket rails. I've got the Lightning rails on my board. And as an additional benefit of this, if you ever need to disconnect your battery or replace your battery or your BMS or anything like that, the corrupted memory error that comes up will also be cleared with this next code that I'm about to tell you. The next code is CACA. So we are going to type in, we're going to hit the up arrow again just like we did last time. Last time was CBCB, Charlie Boy, Charlie Boy. We are going to do CACA, Charlie Adam, Charlie Adam, and we're going to click send. And the light should actually turn green again for a second. It might even flicker. And that's exactly what it did. So the headlights flashed for a moment very quickly. The light bar turned green. It then turned off, and then it turned back on. So that actually recalibrated everything. That paired anything that we might have disconnected. And we are now ready to finish the process. So what I like to do is I like to disconnect from nRF Connect and fully close it. I also like to disconnect from the Onewheel app and fully close that. And then you want to power cycle the board because it's not ready to go yet. Go ahead and turn it off. Turn it back on. And you're done. So that's how easy the process is on nRF Connect. That will allow you to unlock a lot of possibilities with your board. It's a fairly simple thing. We're not modifying firmware here. That's a completely different avenue of doing things. Kind of unrelated at the same time, but the Bluetooth commands allow us to do exactly what you saw here, and they are very helpful, obviously allowing us to unlock new experiences with the rails that we want, and new abilities with maybe the batteries that we want or the replacement parts that we want. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that process today. If you have any questions, please let me know. Feel free to add a comment below if you liked it or whatever you might want to say. Glad we were able to get back on track with all of this, and safe riding.